Hey everybody, John Murphy here. Welcome to On the Homefront. We're very glad to have you with us today. You might be enjoying us live here on WILI AM 1400 or 95.3 on the good old FM. We're also on YouTube 24/7 on any device, including your phone. If you go to the WILI radio channel on YouTube, each of our programs has a playlist. You can get our programs at any time, and this way we have our guests come on, they share information live on the radio to have fun, but then you can get the information from them anytime, and we're trying to really help people connect more and more often. Our show today will be in two parts. For the second half, we're going to take a look at the Swiftwaters Artisans Cooperative, a wonderful organization a few blocks away from us in downtown Willimantic that combines cooperative economics with local arts right here in downtown. They've been here for 20 years, and we're going to talk about that with Pat Miller and Robin Ritz a little bit later in the show. But right now, we're going to continue our series looking at healthcare in Connecticut and how it's been restructured in recent years. And we're going to focus again today on the closing of the maternity unit several years ago at Wyndham Hospital and the impacts of that decision, and a recent decision by the Office of Healthcare Strategy about how to move forward with this debate and possibly creating a birthing center. And that's become very controversial, but that's part of the process underway. We've been covering it now for about 2 years, and I'm very happy to have two people here to continue the information sharing with you. So to my far right, I'm very happy to have back on the program today Rose Reyes. She's a member of the Wyndham Town Council in her third term with the Working Families Party. Rose, thank you for coming back to the studio again.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
And also with a return visit is Jose Salas Blanco from the Neighbor Fund. He was a founding member back in 2017, and they serve many people in the immigrant community coming here from all over the world, trying to make a new life in our region. This organization helps them find their way. So, Jose, thanks for having you as well.
Thank you for having me back and for opening up the space on your program for the Wyndham United to Save Our Healthcare Coalition.
That's right. We've had them on several times. Many people have been on from different partners. We'll continue that. But right now, I guess maybe one thing, Rose, you might do to start is talk about the initial reaction on what the OHS did and how that gives you maybe a strategy for the next steps.
Sure. The first thing we want to have clear is that this agreed settlement is a good faith effort on the Office of Health Strategy that in spite of what Harvard Healthcare Corporation thinks, that the particular components or benchmarks that were not met were going to be met in conjunction with additional work in this agreement, including the search for a third-party, independent third-party birthing center agency, but they're looking for addressing the particular benchmarks that were not met. And they were, out of the 12 benchmarks, 5 were applicable to them. 8 were applicable, but they didn't meet 5 of them. And that's part of the agreed settlement. So the reality is that things haven't been addressed, things haven't been resolved, and things are still closed while they get to do this search and rebuilding of an alternative service for this area, this small city and its region.
Well, you know, there's a really complicated history here, and trying to have it in a few minutes on the radio, we're trying to give people time to not rush. But from what I read from some material that Susan Johnson shared and some other people on the web, the hospital was allowed to wait about closing or not, and the idea of a birthing center as an alternative is being offered, and they're going to say, we'll see if this is possible and if it meets the need, and then we'll decide.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're still in between these options.
Exactly. In other words, we still don't have a viable labor and delivery unit, and right. our delivering individuals will be either transported or they will self-transport to the two local closest, which is at least 30 minutes away, given that it's only one route available to get to Bacchus, Norwich, and Manchester
Hospital.
That's right. Jose, your thoughts?
I think the issues that as a coalition we have raised, either as individuals advocating for equitable access and to healthcare, or as nonprofits too, local nonprofits here in town. Those issues remain, whether it's language barriers or people in our community already facing the barrier of having transportation available to them, even though there are things in place, programs in place to kind of help. It's not really the best option for the people in our community.
So when you talk, I know you had a recent meeting of the coalition. As a team, so to speak, do you have any sense of certain people focusing on certain aspects of what's happening, kind of, because it's a huge thing to break into manageable pieces, right? Like anything, you got to break the mountain into pieces. Do you have a sense of how your team is attacking this and trying to move forward, at least with information collection, to help people have a better understanding? Because there's a big vacuum right now still.
For sure. Our strategy has been to first approach Office of Health Strategies and have very direct questioning about their rationale for making this kind of negotiated, agreed settlement, and negotiating the possibility, well, the reality of closing down, shuttering a delivery unit, given a good faith effort of meeting these benchmarks, which is very problematic for me. I mean, if they didn't meet them, they didn't meet them. They should not have been given a second, third chance. And also asking Office of Health Strategies the way, how are they being true allies to a small city such as ours with our own vulnerabilities, in spite of the fact that there may be less than 200 births per year in the last 3 or 4 years. That doesn't negate the fact that we still need full services in the event of childbirth risks that are associated with working class families, for example, and also people who come from other country parts, So while we don't have that particular capacity, that threshold, we still need, it's like insurance. You want to have a full service, in front of you, so that in the event that you do need it, because you're likely to be needing it because of the status of things in life, it's good to know that it's there. And the idea that we are expected to, accommodate this idea of being transported. Now, in the agreement, they also added language that said, in the transport, they're allowed, the pregnant person can have a family member or another associate with them, or friend or family, whatever. That being said, it still blows your mind that you're going to be in an ambulance for 30 minutes, because that's how long it takes. 17 miles is 30 minutes with no traffic.
In good weather.
In good weather. Thank you, sir.
Indeed.
Thank you. Yeah. Right. So, I'm wondering, how is it that they can argue that in the rest of the state? How is it that in Connecticut, one of the richest states in this nation, is allowing this inequity to evolve, or just like take on a fast track to just decimate, districts of health needs? It's incredible.
We know we've had Representative Johnson here a few times, too. And one thing that's really, it's hard to follow, but it's really important, and I've been trying to find the time to dig myself in the papers, is that the system is already been restructured in a way that goes so far beyond providing just one kind of service. Some hospitals in financial trouble may be sold, they may be reconfigured, assets may be sold off. Vulture capital is being involved, possibly as a way, they call it private investment capital, but that's a different agenda than serving the public per se. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is, with the information gap right now, folks have a hard time staying with the argument until they need the care. And until it hits you, a lot of people say, well, I have to see the flames. I just don't have to see the smoke, right? So right now, for the hospital, I know they won awards, and they've been very well recognized for some incredible work with knee replacement surgery. Some units do very well. And I understand for any business, you can't do everything from A to Z, but you figure in your community, what are the basic human needs that the community has all the time? And you specialize in areas where maybe you can meet special needs, right? So they're doing very well with that kind of surgery, and I've heard good stories about that. But when hospitals decide what not to do anymore, that's the hard part. And when I hear safety mentioned as a reason for closing a unit, can you describe that? Because people wonder what it means to not have a safe unit in the first place.
Well, Mr. Salas, can you
You're smiling.
provide some details to that, because it boggles my mind.
Well, an article that that Rose has here with her, it does mention that these corporations, they are mentioning safety. But what does that really mean? Is that just an argument they're putting forward to justify cutting down a service? What type of studies are they referencing? To the average layperson, it might seem like a good argument, but what exactly do they mean? Is it something that they're saying just to save a couple dollars by cutting down a service? And then too, with transportation, if you're going to be transferred via ambulance or Lifestar helicopter to another hospital, who's really absorbing those costs? You as a patient, as a consumer, right? So yeah, it impacts our pockets
lucky,
too.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the helicopter rides are quite pricey from what I hear.
Yeah.
So there was a professor of public health policy at the University of Minnesota who was interviewed by the Connecticut Mirror in 2021, and she pretty much said that she didn't understand the relationship between patient safety and birth volume. She didn't see the correlation, which is the argument, one of the first front argument that HHC, Hartford Healthcare Corporation,
right,
is arguing for. And here's her quote: "The work that we've done looking at relationship between birth volume and quality of care in rural hospitals has shown a mixed bag. There are a lot of ways in which low-risk childbirth is very well done in low birth volume settings." So it doesn't warrant this argument, but it's the new word that healthcare corporations are using to scare you into thinking that you should let them do this plan, which is shrinking of services.
Yeah, this has come up in some of the press coverage since the OHS decision, and I know the idea of defining safety, in all good faith, the companies that own these businesses, they have to define safety so we understand. If you have a concern, help us understand what that means. If it's how many people per bed, how many doctors per patient, what's your formulas? And the more they explain, the more people will at least have a better understanding, because right now it seems to me it's still just not enough to be clear on. And that makes it harder to move ahead. The other question is the process that has been set up to explore this option of a birthing center. When they set that up, did they give them a timetable to get the job done? Because people have been waiting for years. With all good intention, some idea, well, let's get this done by blank.
I did not catch that. Did you, Jose? I mean, I was looking at the actually agreed settlement.
I want to mention the Connecticut Mirror is an online news source that's really good. They've been covering this.
Yeah.
And they've been also covering tenant unions, which is another show we're doing. So they'll have a lot of information.
Is it 30 days they need to report out?
It says here in the settlement, it's one of the points, it says commencing on 1 year from the date of this agreed settlement, Wyndham will report to OHS annually for 3 years of the following.
Oh, yeah.
The number of birthing people from WWHC who deliver it each year, the hospitals at which these individuals deliver, the method of transportation to/from the hospital for these individuals, and their support persons, patients, socio-demographic information, including language, ethnicity, race, and age, and payer mix. So we as a coalition too believe that this information should already be had. One of those main reasons is the last birth. I believe that occurred here in Wyndham was in June of 2020. It's been 3 years since then. So one would imagine that this information should already be at the disposal of this corporation, right? Of this health corporation. So that also leaves us wondering, why wasn't this information received beforehand, before the settlement?
Well, let me take a break right now. In case you've just joined us, we're talking about health care in Eastern Connecticut with Rose Reyes and Jose Salas Blanco. We'll take a short break for a couple of messages, and we'll come right back. Please stay with us. Hey, we're back live on the Homefront today. You know, this is a community radio show here on WILI as part of our 5 o'clock block Monday through Friday. And our focus is always on the arts throughout the year, but we're adding more and more community aspects of living because many parts of our community are under stress right now. We're talking about health care today. We're going to have people on again soon from the tenants unions, which are forming around the state. So we're trying to include the arts as well as aspects of our living. That's why our shows are on YouTube. We can always share links and have people at organizations share their stories more widely. And if you want to get involved, just use this email. It's john@humanartsmedia.com, and I can certainly share your announcements here or on WECS Radio. You can come in the studio if you need some time to share your story. We're available all throughout the year, so use that email. And right now I'm going to come back to our conversation again with Rose Reyes from the Wyndham Town Council and also Jose Salas Blanco from the Neighbor Fund. Where we left off before, Rose, was the idea of some deadline or some pressure to resolve this limbo within a short time frame, right?
Right. Okay. So in my layperson's purview, it could be found someplace else. I'd be very grateful. We see it at a point here, maybe on page 4 of the 8-page document regarding the agreed settlement. We don't have a startup date for the research of the independent third party. And then we do have, however, like 3 months after the Department of Public Health publishes its birth center policies, they can now decide if that independent third party determines that we need and it's feasible as defined by the statement of work, which is that plan that has a startup date.
Right.
To create a birthing center in or around our town, not even where we would recognize having a maternity ward, like in the hospitals per se, right? And they have within 90 days of reviewing the report with OHS, and then they have to do the surveys and contact providers and so on and so forth. So we're talking about another additional delay of at least another year. And I wanted to point out the redundancy of having 3 years worth of monitoring when we argued that should have been data that was supposed to be made available at the first certificate of needs hearing.
Because it's old data.
Yeah. Well, how do you justify closing something besides your bottom line?
Yeah.
Right? So this is my concern. And I really wish that the OHS, it becomes the ally of this region.
Right. Well, we're going to invite them to come up. We've been waiting a while for them to finish the next step in their own process to invite them to come in, just to really explain and help people understand their strategy and what their hopes are for a successful outcome of whatever they're trying to do. But, the other thing I want to ask Jose about that we haven't focused on specifically is how is the healthcare system changes affecting people coming here from abroad? This is the work you do with the Neighbor Fund. But when you think about healthcare, how is it affecting the people you work with? Are there any things that are different for them that are maybe more challenging than somebody who grew up and lives in the area?
Yes, well, we do interact with community members that are refugees or come from mixed status households. What mixed status households means either one of the spouses is a citizen and the other one is undocumented, or the children might be citizens but the parents are undocumented.
Right.
We did see community members that were impacted by the preemptive shuttering of this service before the state put out its decision. However, with these people, rightfully so, they're very hesitant to speak up and share their personal experience, which is which is very unfortunate because they're part of our community. They're being impacted by these decisions being made by corporations in trying to maximize their profit margins. And one of the issues that we saw as a nonprofit was with either refugees or mixed status households is, at least here in the community, there's a network available to them to help them kind of work their way through these issues.
Mm-hmm.
But as nonprofits, we can only extend ourselves so much, and it's a bit more challenging if we have to travel to another town where a person might be giving birth, or they might be getting a procedure that is no longer available here at Wyndham
Right.
due to the
Right.
continuous cutback of services. So that's very challenging for them. Also, an issue we see is, for example, after a person gives birth, you need a car seat, right, to transport the newborn from the
Absolutely.
hospital to their home. And sometimes there's people, they don't really have to be refugees or mixed status households. It could just be a person from the community that's not impacted by that, who does have some financial struggles, and affording a car seat might be a challenge to them, especially if that's their first newborn.
Oh, yeah, and those were expensive because they have to be made for safety, so they're not cheap. That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and a hospital won't allow a parent to take their child until there's a car seat, which is understandable, but again, it's putting more pressure and more stress and financial stress on these working families in our community.
Let's be clear. We're not a rich city, right? And
We're
we
the poorest part of the state.
right.
That's
We
right.
60% of our population who have self-selected to identify through the Census Bureau make less than $50,000 a year. And that being said, this impacts everyone across races right now,
Yeah.
but especially people of color. I mean, according to Brenda's piece here she got from Susan Johnson's website, there was a between 2015 and 2017, people of color made up almost 45% of those giving birth, and almost 64% of all the pregnancy-related deaths.
Yeah.
These are not good points. And then
They call that disproportionate, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, right. And for HHC, Hartford Healthcare Corporation, to argue that closing this particular facility here runs against a common sense approach about taking care of our people.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the journalism that still needs to be done, is to give people a chance to explain the huge structural decisions that were made off the microphones with people that don't get a chance to change the language around. And that's part of the unanswered questions that you have now.
Indeed.
But one thing I want to do with Jose while we have a few minutes is he works throughout the year with people from other places. And he started the Neighbor Fund. He was one of the founders in 2017. And I wondered, pre-COVID, okay, which was huge. How is it like to start this? And how has it been over maybe 6 or 7 years? What changes have you noticed working with these folks coming from other places?
So I don't know if I would call myself a founder, but I was there
One of the early
when
members.
it started. Yes,
Okay. There
one
you
of
go.
the early members. Our focus is, there's that if people where they're at, it's unsustainable, their life there. It's a human right to migrate. How that looks like, that's what causes a lot of debate. But how can you ask a parent who can't provide for their child in their native country due to policies that were put in place or that were kind of coerced. They were coerced into by other countries. There's the issue of colonialism and how that still has an impact even today in Latin America,
Especially about
Central
where the money
America.
goes. That's the whole thing. Where does the money go?
Yeah.
If I may, John, you might want to give context. 2017 was a really hard year. It was first year of my campaign, but mostly it was a hard year because of the leadership on a national level, and the fight with ICE and the deportation issues and stuff. And I want to say proudly that this small city, established a sanctuary city status in 2017, and it ran parallel with the creation of the neighbor fund. And I can't say enough about how those two things brought to light the importance of our people in this town.
And I was very proud when Elsa Nunez and Eastern took on the DACA. They were one of, I think, two or three schools in the nation that openly embraced those students in a different kind of situation. That's another example of our area. Yeah.
Right, the ability for us to respond and stand tall for our people.
Yeah, that was a bright moment. So, Jose, how can people connect to you now during the year? Because I went to your website. There's a lot of stuff there. How can people connect to you? And we'll have you back maybe in the winter or spring when you have a special program just on the whole idea of immigration. We'll do something different with you.
Yes. So we do recognize that, right? Immigrants and refugees, they're part of our history as a town, and also they're part of our community, active members of our community too, whether it's someone that volunteers in the community through their house of worship, if they're religious, or through some other nonprofits, right? Just trying to better the situations in the community. And the Neighbor Fund was also started off by other pre-existing groups too.
Kind of a coalition.
Okay. Yes. And the way that the organization was shaped was the people impacted by those policies, immigrants, refugees, really had helped to shape things. And if people want to obtain more information about us, know how to support us, they can go onto our website, theneighborfund.org, or they can find us on Facebook too, The Neighbor Fund. We also have an email address, which is theneighborfund@gmail.com. And if anyone needs help with offsetting the cost of trying to obtain legal status, if there's a pathway for them, we do offer help with that, with trying to offset those costs if it's related with their with them trying to adjust their immigration status.
Well, don't forget to add the coalition's email address.
And then also, as members of the Wyndham United Coalition, if anyone has questions about how they can get involved, how they can support this work that we're doing, which is trying to obtain more answers from our state officials and trying to have, or pushing for the community to have a voice in a birthing center, if that's the way things go.
Right.
They can go to they can send their inquiries to savewyndhammaternity@gmail.com, or they can also visit our Facebook page, which is Wyndham United to Save Our Healthcare Coalition.
Great. Well, those are ways to connect in between. One thing before we go, Rose, you were saying that at some point, too, the town council will be talking about some of these issues.
I'm
Can
hoping
you share
to.
any thoughts, please?
I'm hoping to bring it up for agenda speak and possibly establish a resolution of a sort and have interested parties partake in the coalition. That's important. It's important for the council to understand the implications of losing a full, robust service hospital. It makes our city not attractive to young families or families who want to establish themselves here, so to speak. Our median age is less than 40, and we're all living longer, and people can decide to have children later, and we need to be ready for that.
Yeah. I would just to reiterate Rose's point, it's like if you're on the market to buy a home, right now it's kind of tough for working people, but if you take on a mortgage loan, if that's within your grasp, that's like a 15-year commitment or a 5-10-year commitment. Sure. And if you're looking at where you're going to move into, and you notice that there's a community with a hospital, yes, it's 10-15 minutes from where you live, but you won't find the healthcare services that you need, then you might look elsewhere. So, too, as a town, I believe that's something that our town officials should take into consideration and be kind of like Reyes and, get a little bit more involved.
Well, I know when I've talked to the economic development people, when they create their materials and their brochures, the availability of healthcare is a very powerful attractant for people to relocate, especially maybe young people from the other side of the state or whatever. So that's a challenge at every level. Apart from the actual healthcare itself for those families, is the system around it.
I want to add, John, that the maternity closure is maybe one of the straws that is breaking this camel's back, but it's not without notice that the elimination of our services, it just doesn't seem to stop. And once we get this recalibrated or restructured correctly to meet our needs, we need to go back and see what else we're missing and get that put back in, like, our intensive care or whatever is more appropriate for us at the moment. But it should be from cradle to grave. It's our best piece of insurance to assure people if they live here, they will be taken care of.
I know my early vision when I was a kid of a hospital is that you had a certain level of core care for life experiences, and you went elsewhere for specialized care, that you can't do everything in one hospital, but certain levels of everyday life were combined.
Okay.
And that's part of what we hope to have the OHS people here and other providers, is to help us understand the thinking, because if there is a strategy, I think a lot of people don't get it yet. And if there are points to be made, I think they should have a chance to make them. And that's what we're going to do here, is try to invite people to come in to explain things, because there is misinformation and there is misunderstanding.
Well, the damning part was there was like no community involvement with this agreed settlement whatsoever.
That's right.
I mean, the public hearing was held in the midst of COVID, 2020, right?
Yeah.
And then they had closed it before that. And people were trying to survive. The last thing they thought of was that they were getting ripped off of their services from HHC, and now we have to catch up.
Yeah.
And I think, too, how does this decision, how does it further the state's and a healthcare corporation's goal of trying to make healthcare more affordable, equitable, and accessible, especially with a community or our region, right, where it's kind of like a small city, like Rose has said, and also we're kind of like a rural area too, in certain parts here in eastern Connecticut.
Yeah. Okay, well, Rose Reyes and Jose Salas Blanco, thank you very much for being here today. And
thank you for having us. This is
we'll
really
look forward
important.
to having you back later in the wintertime, and we'll keep updates coming with you and others as things happen, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Okay, we'll take a short musical break from Mose Allison and then come back and talk about the Swiftwater Artisans Collective. Stay with us.
I'm smashed. Looks like I've gone and done it. I'm crashed. I think I stepped right on it. I'm tempting fate. It's getting late and I'm ripped. My mind is spinning. Tripped. The other side is winning. Before you count me out, let me tell you what it's all about. I always thought that I was in control. I always thought that I could play my role. But since I came to this town, my mind is upside down. I'm smashed, just like a busted fender. Crashed, Where can a man surrender? Take me out, coach, I'm through. I'll get myself together in a day or two. Reach my goal. Now I'm staring at my empty cup. Will the real me please stand up? I'm smashed. Hello there, operator. Crashed. You'll have to try me later. Just between me and you, I'll feel much better in a day or two.
Okay, we're back for the last part of our show today as our guests exit. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Homefront. There's a wonderful organization right down the street from us called the Swiftwater Artisans Cooperative. It's a wonderful way to combine cooperative economics, sharing expenses and profits with people who are trying to make a living with their art. Here's a short conversation with Pat Miller and Robin Ritz. Stay with us.
As John said, we got started about 20 years ago, and as a pop-up holiday shop up the street here that was organized in large part by Jean Dismay. It was kind of an experiment to see what kind of interest there was locally in having a place for artists and artisans to sell their work. And of course, it is not an easy thing selling your work.
No.
So it was wildly popular. People were actually lined out the door to get in to shop. Originally to get in to say, I want to be part of it, and then to get in to shop. So we evolved from there. We've been in a couple of different spots on Main Street. Mm-hmm. And the current one we've been in around 10 years, I think. It was in the Wame building at 866 Main Street. It's between Bank and Walnut for locals, and yep, on the opposite side of the street from the post office.
Right.
So we wanted to use a cooperative model. And what that means is that the members own the business. So the artists who participate in this pay a membership fee to join, and then we do everything. We're the staff. We certainly show our work, but we have no employees. It's us. We're there doing it, and
kind of like a sweat equity thing, right?
Indeed, exactly. Indeed. And we do the cleaning. We do everything. So we were helped along the way by the food co-op, which is even older than we are, way
Sure.
older than we are,
That's
about
right.
twice as old. And they introduced us to co-op models and how to do business that way. They were a real inspiration and very helpful to us. Our model is a little different from theirs, but we want to make sure that people understand that you don't have to be a member of anything to come shop at the co-op at Swiftwater's.
I know, like even after all these years, people still think that way, that,
Yeah.
well, I'm not a member, so I'm not welcome, or I don't, right. That's really important. And also, I think this is a good time to bring in Robin, because she's been a member a couple of years now, fairly new, although you've been doing your work, I guess, over 20 years with your art. What was it that made you decide you wanted to join? Because you've been doing your own work for a while. So what was the draw to become a member for you?
So I did want to be part of the artist community, and so it was my husband, Jose, that encouraged me to be brave about it. I think a lot of artists have a fear of being seen.
Yeah.
And it's almost overwhelmingly paralyzing, but it got to a point where there was no more wall space left in my own home. It was cheaper than storage. And so, yeah. So it was, I mean, certainly his encouragement and just knowing that they had been in operation for so long, that they were a true entity and something that I knew I'd be proud to be a part of. And so it was easy once I got up the courage to do it that I wanted to be a part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, during the year we have many people coming out from different arts councils or guilds, and the members may have a couple of shows a year, and they don't have that many opportunities to show. So like a co-op is another way to connect your home studio to a marketplace that's there all the time, not just for a weekend, inside, not outside, and you can help pay for it and save money by being part of it. And I guess that's part of the challenge, is getting people to realize how simple it is, not how complicated. Right? It is simple.
Yes. Yep, we pay a membership fee to join, and then we each pay a monthly fee, and we each work 8 hours a month or the equivalent, and that means that we can reduce the amount of commission that the shop takes for work, because ordinarily at this point most galleries or other places that sell artists' work charge between 40 and 50% ordinarily.
Is that pretty common these days?
Commission, yes.
So you have to realize, these places where you go, half of that revenue is going to the place that's hosting the event, kind of thing. Maybe it's a fundraiser sometimes, but that's the gallery business.
Exactly, yeah. And they have expenses, and we have expenses. So we pay rent to Wayne for the space, and we need to cover all of that sort of thing. So it's a good way to have to be able to sell your work and to do it with other artists. It becomes an artists' community, and we have a wide range of things for. We say we make beautiful things for you, and we really do. All kinds of beautiful things, from pottery, jewelry, wooden things like pull toys and rocking horses for kids. We have books, we have prints, we have a lot of fabric pieces, weaving and knitting, and much more than that. So we are really encouraging people to come in and have a look.
And part of why we're doing it now is that it is a holiday season, and we don't want to pander to all the commercial products going out there, but when people are celebrating their culture in some way, keeping your money local in some way is always a good thing. Wherever you go, if you keep it local, it's going to help the whole foundation of the economy. And one thing I wanted to ask Robin, too, we have a few more minutes, by the way. If you're listening to us in the radio, we're speaking today with Pat Miller and Robin Ritz about the Swiftwater Artisans Co-op. Tell us about your work in multimedia a little bit, in terms of the work you do that you have at the gallery. And also, you're a musician. We'll have you back later in the winter. As Robin is a vocalist in the band Thankful Soul Revival, and they play in the region. We'll have you back sometime about that.
Thank you.
But talk us about how you're trying to connect your art with this great effort.
Absolutely. So my artwork is inspired by nature. It was inspired by a throwaway society. And so it started really, I'm a bit of a pack rat, but beach combing and realizing there was more spark plugs on the beach than shells some days, right? And so I would gather these found objects and feel an obligation to do something with them and store them and catalog them away. And so I was inspired by Gaudi's work. Antonio Gaudí is a Spanish artist that did a lot of work with recycles and ceramics and glass. So I started exploring stained glass. I started exploring just different ways of combining thrown away objects with natural objects to create an awareness of your litter is impacting our environment, and bringing an attention to the nature around us, and also giving people a way to connect with nature, where I find acorns all the time, but how many people walk by and would never acknowledge or recognize it, or who lives in a city that couldn't have it in their own presence. So giving people artwork that allows them to create a connection with something greater than them in the natural sense and a spiritual sense. It's almost like a compulsive creativity where I'll find an object, I'll find a shell, and I know it is a butterfly wing, or I'll find, so it's an intuitive process too for me that allows me to honor creativity in a way that's really just to create connections for others to feel. They're going to interpret it on their own, but I think it is important as an artist to at least highlight something that's important to me, which is our connection with nature and the environment and its well-being and balance.
So when your idea takes a form, does it end up sometimes as a wall hanging? Is it an object that sits somewhere that people can have as an object? What forms do you? You're smiling
yes. Yeah, you can come down to the gallery and see it's pretty eclectic. So there's window pieces, there's wall hangings. I've got a series of greeting cards and cards, witch bells, door hangers, meditation boxes, discovery boxes. There's a lot of different ways that I'm repurposing old boxes or crates or papers, and so it is very broad spectrum as far as what I'm coming up with.
Right.
But a lot of it is just commonly discarded items like jars or boxes or things that people really take for granted that we're throwing it away into an environment that then has to live with it, right? Yeah.
And it's wonderful work that she does. It's very creative and appealing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I want to mention a website. If you want to find out more about Swift Waters, how to join and maybe participate, or just go and check it out, all the information's there. Swiftwaters.org, so it's a real simple one, swiftwaters.org. Now, when someone like Robin joins, because when you go to the store, every nook and cranny has stuff. It's amazing. Everywhere you go, different levels, you walk around. How do you divvy it up in terms of how much space? Some people need vertical space, right? Some people need like a nice tabletop. So how do you do that?
Well, we try to give everybody an equivalent amount of space. And some people's work requires a bit more. But we do have a variety of things to use. Shelves, cases, tables, walls, floors.
Yeah, that's true.
We use every bit.
Hanging from the ceiling in some cases.
Hanging from the ceiling, yes. Robin hangs from the ceiling sometimes.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that conversation. Swift
started.
Waters is a great resource for our community. If you're an artist, it's a place for you to begin to show your work, something out of your house to meet other people. The website to learn more and to connect is simple, swiftwaters.org. Swiftwaters.org. So thanks to Robin and Pat for that conversation. And thanks to you for joining us here on the Homefront each week here on WILI. If you want to get involved, the door and the studio is always open to you. Use the email, john@humanartsmedia.com to connect, and we'll have you here as soon as you want. We'll see you next week. Take care. Happy holidays, however you celebrate them. Keep the faith.